Hey, and welcome to I Was Just Thinking. My name is Heather Deveaux, and I was just thinking, about some purpose and our purpose and what the hell we're doing here. And I'm not talking meaning of life purpose. I'm talking what are we doing every day when we get out of bed and what gets us out of bed. And it's not random that I'm thinking about this because I wrote a blog post yesterday over on my platform about purpose and the role that purpose is playing in my life right now, but also how I've been able to shift my perspective around the idea of my life's purpose and how I've been able to get some ground under me, get my feet under me around the idea of purpose. And where I landed with it has helped to make so much more sense of my life. Like immediately when I got to this place, when I sort of landed in this place of, oh, this is what purpose actually means to me, not that this is the broader definition of purpose or the scientifically accepted or community accepted version of purpose, but what I define purpose to be, and then what that means to me. When I got to that place through some journaling and through some thinking and reflecting exercises I've been doing as of late, like I felt like things just kind of stopped and then sped up really quickly because it all became very, very clear to me. So I want to share with you what that looks like and walk you through some of the questions I was asking myself to be able to get to this place of like, oh, this is clearly how I have been spending my time and what is important to me and what I think purpose is and what I think purpose is to me. So let's start with the line that I wrote in my blog post almost last because it really did make me feel very empowered and it made me feel like there is something much more deeper here that I could go into. But for now, we're going to just keep it at the surface level. We got lots of time together. Don't forget to subscribe, come back, listen to whatever you want to listen to, take whatever you need to take from this podcast. But I want to talk about this line that I wrote that says, I no longer feel like a woman who is resourceful and scrappy. I feel like a woman who is resourced and ready. And as I was writing, I was thinking about what that shift has meant to me in terms of my purpose and how I have been able to shift my identity, even in this season of change where I am engaging in this creative sabbatical. I am taking a break from running my business. I mean, in effect, I am running a business here with my blog and now this podcast. And, there's a couple of courses and programs I've run, but nothing major and nothing that I'm like committing to long term. I'm really just in this place right now where I'm seeing what feels good. I am doing a lot of reading. I'm doing a lot of napping. I'm not necessarily working on anything in particular just for the sake of working on it. I'm working on something if it lights me up and it feels really good. And so I had been thinking about my creative sabbatical in terms of this in progress project. And I had had a conversation with somebody this week about the sabbatical and how we keep coming back to this place of like, what's next? And I feel like I've just gotten started, really. Like I've been doing this for 4 months now with the sabbatical, and it has, developed a lot of amazing things for me. And I've had lots of time and opportunity to think and create and to cross things off the list and to check things off my bucket list and all of that great stuff. But at the same time, there is this underscored assumption, this sort of underlying assumption that I'm going to pick something at the end of this to be what's next. And so because of the amount of journaling and self-reflecting and, just full on way that I am using these platforms as a way to improve, like self-improve, I've been able to get a lot of clarity very quickly. And so when I thought of this line that I wrote in the blog, I'm no longer resourceful, I am resourced. That came from realizing that, this platform, this creative platform, which I have sort of named as Heather Deveaux Creative, but really it's a placeholder because who knows. And I did that as a way to just keep the momentum going. When I had come up with the idea to engage in a creative sabbatical, I had decided that one of the things that I was going to do with this was not label things too heavily. Like everything I've created, including the blog and including this podcast, is up for debate, could land on the chopping block at any moment. But really, it is the act of doing these things that is what's next. And so when I was having this conversation with somebody this week about what's next, I kind of hit pause and I thought about that, because there seems to be an expectation, not just from other people looking inward at what I'm doing, but also from myself, that it feels like I need to have an answer to the question, okay, so I'm taking a break from running my consulting business. What's next? And well, this is what's next. This podcast, this blog. I have over 40 blogs that I've written in 4 months. That's more than most people write in a whole year. And I have drafted my 7th romance novel, and I've run 3 edits on it already, and it's going to be ready to publish before Christmas. And I have been traveling, and I have been reading, just reading like crazy, just learning things. I have been journaling. I created an audio course. I'm not doing nothing. And I'm not offended if you think I am. And if you think I'm not doing enough, that's cool. And if you think, well, I'm spending way too much time doing other things when I should just be napping and reading, well, that's cool too. Because, don't get me wrong, I do a lot of napping and reading. But I did realize through this conversation that, yeah, this is actually what's next. And so I wanted to stop thinking about it as a sort of stopping place, that this wasn't just a stop on the road on the way to whatever this next great thing is that I'm going to do. I mean, this is pretty great. This platform that I have built, which doesn't get a ton of traffic, but gets pretty good traction, that is getting a lot of really great real-time feedback from people who are, really supportive and really surprised and really engaged with what I'm doing, and are taking things from it from themselves as well. This is what's next. This is what I'm doing. And so when I thought of that, I was able to reconsider the idea that I'm super resourceful and I'm scrappy and I can build something out of nothing and I can create a whole platform and I can start a podcast and I can do a blog and I can do all these things because I have done them before. But I came at it this time after this conversation, considering that, yeah, that is true. I am resourceful and I am scrappy and I am all those things. But that seems to be an old way of thinking for me that I think is not going to continue to serve me as I sort of step into the here and now. And so not just stepping into the next thing. And when I say the next thing, I mean what's the next business I'm going to start, or what's the next job I'm going to have, or what's my next project? That's not really what I'm thinking about. What I'm thinking about here is, when I think about stepping into who I am right now, yes, I'm resourceful, but I'm resourced. I've got everything I need at this point to go in any direction that I want. And since we're, kind of looking at this from a self-improvement perspective and from a personal development perspective, I think it is important to have the conversation around the language that we are using to drive our purpose and to drive the things that we're doing. And so that's a subtle shift that I was able to make this week in thinking about, yeah, I'm resourceful, but man, I am resourced. I am ready. I have everything I need. And I am already doing it, you guys. This is what this is. This is not a trial and error kind of thing anymore. This is, I mean, in a sense it is, because I am effectively trying things on to see, do I like them or do they mean something different to me now? But I'm not just throwing the proverbial spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. I'm throwing the spaghetti at the wall because I cooked the spaghetti, because I know how to cook spaghetti. And right now, while I am looking for, feedback, do you like the podcast? Great. I am actually doing this simply because I want to. And that is the goal. That is the purpose. Now, what's really interesting about the idea of purpose, not just in relation to this creative sabbatical or this podcast or my blog or any of these things, but what's really interesting about the idea of purpose is that I have come to the conclusion, and I'm not the first to discover this, I understand that, but it is important to me, to recognize that I came to this thought as a result of reading lots of things, as a result of listening to lots of podcasts and audiobooks and those kind of things. But what I have sort of landed on with the idea of purpose is that I'm not looking for my purpose. I am actually living it. And I'm so lucky that I get to say that, not because I'm living this super fantastic life, which, like, in my opinion, I am, but I'm lucky that I get to say that because I realized that it was true. I realized that not only is my purpose to do things like show up, create, cook spaghetti, throw it at the wall, see what happens, see what I like, take meaning from that, make more meaning from that, learn something from that, and then do it all over again. Not only did I realize that that's my purpose, but the reason I'm not looking for a greater purpose in life, as it were, is because I realized I have been doing this all along. And one of the things I wrote in the blog post was that my purpose, whether I have realized it or not, and like now I do realize it, has been my self actualization. And self actualization, I have come to know in great detail. I have a master's degree in adult education. I've studied this kind of stuff for years. I've practiced this kind of stuff for years, but I had never thought of it in terms of purpose. And that purpose is actually a choice. And so I have chalked most of my life's achievements up to the fact that I just tried a thing and it worked. And then I just tried another thing and that worked. And kind of pulled the thread, of the sweater, as we say, to see what else there was. And I kept pulling on this one particular thread around adult education, around college instruction, around curriculum development, around course creation, around business, like all those kinds of things. I kept pulling on this thread. And one of the things I do really well and quite naturally is to make meaning of my experiences so that it can take me from one experience to the other. But what I hadn't realized was that I was doing that on purpose, that I wasn't just showing up and throwing cooked spaghetti at the wall. I was actually taking information from something I had done previously, filtering out the noise and taking the good parts of what I learned. Maybe it was what I want to do or what I don't want to do, depending on what the learning was, and I pull that forward into the next thing. And so I have defined my life by this field of adult education, and I have in many ways described myself as always having been involved in adult education of one form or another. But when I remove that lens and I look at what actually has been going on, so this is just pretty meta, I mean, I'm talking about self-reflection and then the self-reflection over self-reflection days gone by. So, these experiences have already happened for me. I have already made plenty of meaning of them. But when I looked at it this week through the lens of purpose, rather than activity or outcome, I realized that I have been doing this meaning making, again, not news, just in the context of purpose. I've been doing this meaning making for a long time. And whether it was because I was trying to protect myself or I was trying to, make something good of what I had experienced, maybe it was something bad, maybe it was something good, but whatever it was, I was always looking for a through line of, okay, well, here's what this looks like, and here's what this means, and here's what I'm going to take from this. And then I would go and I would move on to the next thing. And so there's a natural assumption that there will be a next thing for me. I mean, I even assume it too, but what's been very interesting about the last couple of days, especially this week, is that there has been a very easy unraveling of purpose in terms of my purpose is to show up, have a lived experience, and then learn from it and to make meaning from it and to self-reflect. And when I think about the things that I want to try at this point in my life, so I'm 43 years old, I'll be 44 in a couple of months. And when I think about this period of my life where I'm actively not just engaging in a season of change, but like I volunteered for this shit, just to be clear, I pulled myself out of my business and I decided I was going to create this creative platform and I wanted to do it. So I have pulled myself out of effectively entrepreneurship in the traditional sense, and I have still very entrepreneurial what I'm doing, but I don't think of it as a business, even though like technically I guess it could be if I threw some offers behind it. But what I'm doing really is I am feeling out for that purpose. So when I thought about starting this podcast, I'm going to be real honest. When I thought about starting this podcast, one of the things that kept coming up for me was this sense of obligation that I felt like if I got back into podcasting, that I was going to have to keep doing it and that I wasn't going to be able to walk away from it. It wasn't going to be a clean, sort of cutting ties. And I just gave myself permission for that to not be true. That if I wanted to be podcasting right now, I could be podcasting. And if in 6 weeks I decide I don't want to be podcasting, well, it's been fun. And I said that. I was very honest about that in the very first episode of the podcast. But I do think it's important to say that when we make decisions, sometimes we make these decisions as if we're never going to get to make them again. And right now, what I'm really doing is paying attention to, just because I liked it today, maybe I'm not going to like it tomorrow. And if I do like it tomorrow, that's great. But if I don't like it, that's got to mean something. And I'm no longer just chalking that up to, well, I'm just having a bad day or this is just uncomfortable. I'm really paying attention to like, why is that uncomfortable? And why am I not motivated to do this? Because everything I'm doing right now in this creative sabbatical, in my life, I have done several things, including just decided I'm going to renovate my basement. I created a whole she shed in the backyard. I completely renovated my barn that was just sitting there. It was completely empty. And, I have done lots of different things, and I'm just doing them because I want to. And what that means is, there is no external motivation for me to show up right now, which is super interesting, which means that I have gotten to a place that my purpose no longer is influenced by what's happening around me, that I have gotten to a place with my self-improvement and my self-reflection and, my self-awareness really, that I know myself well enough to know that if I start this podcast, there is a real good chance in 6 weeks from now, I'm not going to want to do it anymore. And yet I am going to do it in the meantime because it's what I want to do right now. I'm not worried about future Heather. I'm not worried about what the consequences of starting something and then stopping it are anymore, because I know now my purpose in doing this is actually to get feedback. And yeah, external feedback is super important. And I hope that you love this show. And I hope that I continue to be intrinsically motivated, so internally motivated just for myself to show up and do this. But I'm not holding myself to that, because the whole point of this creative sabbatical is to follow the flow of what feels good. And so when you think about your purpose, think about it in terms of removing a layer of lenses. So oftentimes when we think about things as big, that contain a big scope, like the idea of purpose, for some reason, it's not some reason, it is socially encoded in us that when we think of purpose, we think of our jobs, we think of our families. We very rarely think of the things that we like doing. We tend to think of the things that pay us a lot of money and, oh, isn't it wonderful that we like doing it too? And so I'm kind of reverse engineering this at this point in my life, where because I am bankrolling this creative sabbatical, I don't need to worry about what this podcast is going to result, what the ROI, the return on investment, what it's going to be for this podcast. Whereas before, when I had several other podcasts, which you heard me mention in the first episode of I Was Just Thinking, when I had podcasts before, there was a lot of external motivation for creating those pieces of content. So much so that I think I burnt myself out from it. And I think that I resented it a little bit because I was showing up and doing all this work and it didn't seem like it was resulting in anything externally. So followers, likes, subscribes, money, engagement, leads, whatever that might be, when you put your business hat on, however you measure success in your business. I had created a ton of content over several years, almost a decade really, And it just felt like it wasn't doing anything. And yet I loved doing it. And I loved doing it until I had to start worrying about those goddamn metrics. And as soon as somebody said to me, how many downloads do you have? And I was like, I have no idea. It turned out I had thousands, which was amazing. But until I knew that, I didn't care about that. And my purpose for showing up and doing that podcast, whichever one, pick one, because it happened every time, whichever podcast I was working on or whatever piece of content I was working on, the motivation behind that content became so externally motivated that I found myself resenting it and not wanting to do it. And so every time I had to show up and do it, I felt like, what is the point? I could be making money in other ways. This is just a waste of my time. And it really turned me off of the idea of just showing up in the first place. And what ended up happening is I retreated. And I went so far into myself, away from the business community and away from, really just the idea of entrepreneurship in general, that I was like, I'm just going to be a consultant, like a quiet little consultant who makes a lot of money. I want to be a quiet little consultant who makes a lot of money, but I don't want to have to post on social media anymore. And I don't want to have to create content to, interact with potential clients. And I don't want to have to convince somebody through tons and tons and tons of free information that I'm the right person to work with them. And one of the reasons that I ended up working with nonprofit organizations in my consulting business is because you don't have to market to that clientele. They're working through organizations and referrals, and they're not listening to podcasts to find their next instructional designer. And I found that to be true. And so I just stopped doing all those things. And the very last podcast that I have recorded, I mentioned earlier in the previous episode, was back in August of 2022. But if you had asked me, I would have said it was like a year ago, because that doesn't seem right to me. I feel like I actually hadn't taken that long of a break. And it turns out that I did. I took almost 3 entire years off before I had thought to myself, maybe I'll do another podcast. And so the reason that I tell you all of this is because when I felt obligated and externally motivated to show up and produce something of some kind of value, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But to do those things for the purpose of growing a business, I lost my sparkle. I lost my give a shit. I was like, yeah, this is great. And you know what? I'm just not going to do it anymore. And you know what I did? I didn't even say I wasn't going to do it anymore. I just stopped doing it. And I thought it was super interesting because nobody came looking for the next episode and nobody asked about it. And it just confirmed to me that I was speaking to a group of people that were probably never going to buy from me, and that's okay. But at the time, the external motivation was, yeah, that's not okay, actually. Like, I don't want to be doing this. I want to be working somewhere else where people are valuing my input and what I'm creating, and it's turning into dollars, and I want to do that. And so that's kind of where that came from. And now, at this point in my life, everything I'm doing, including just talking into the void to record this podcast, God, I hope somebody's listening. But the reason I'm doing this is I am intrinsically motivated to do this. It is so beyond me. Like, I don't know that I could have stopped myself from sitting down to record this podcast, to be honest, because it just feels like compelling to me at this point in my life. I feel like I have something to share, and I know it's important, and I know it is of value to people. And I have been sharing it on the blog, and I have been just mostly showing up on LinkedIn, of all places. I think from a business perspective, this content is landing really well on LinkedIn, and I'm getting lots of feedback from people there and having invitations for conversations and for some networking and just connections. And so that's been going really well from a business perspective of like whatever this thing could end up being, except it already is. It's a thing. And I have had to tell myself this week that I need to stop treating it like an experiment. It is already just the next thing. It just doesn't look formal yet. It doesn't have a container yet. I don't know what it's going to be called in the end. I mean, I'm definitely not going to stick with Heather Deveaux Creative, but when I look at this website and I look at the things that I've been doing and I read what I have written back to myself, it all makes perfect sense to me. And it is such a natural evolution of this purpose that I can't help but think I wasn't going to land here anyway. I just think that I landed here a little faster because I sort of forced this break in my business and in my entrepreneurial world. I forced this break to get quiet, to listen to what is it that I want to be doing. And when you go to my website, the website is heatherdeveaux.com. It's been heatherdeveaux.com for a decade. I just keep swapping out them websites and I keep using the same URL. So for now, it's heatherdeveaux.com. Maybe. I actually own a ton of internet real estate. I don't know if I have ever really talked about this in any public forum, but I own like 15 different internet domains, like website domains that I have swapped in and out over the years for different projects. But when I get an idea for something, I buy the domain and I just pay for it, never ending, until I decide like, okay, no, that's definitely not something I want to do. But when I go to heatherdeveaux.com now, it just feels so much more like me, not put on, not fancy. It's well written and it's well presented, but it's not meant to sell you anything. It's not meant to get you to subscribe to anything. I mean, join the email list, obviously. I've got one of those. I have an email list and I've got some freebies, but I only created them because I wanted to, and I wanted to share this journey with people. And I wanted to encourage people to go on this journey themselves in even the smallest form. Because I think that this idea that we're taking a break or we're pausing, I think that has been starting out, that was the right way to describe it. But now that I have been into this for several months and have like just drastically started to get a lot of clarity, it was going to happen eventually, right? I was going to get clarity eventually. But now that I've definitely gotten way more clarity in being quiet and introspective and self-reflective and honest and compassionate with myself about like, what is it? What the fuck? What am I doing here? The answer is, it's not what am I doing here? It's I am doing it. I am doing all the things that light me up and make me feel alive and make me feel like my life has an actual purpose. I am living my actual purpose, which is show up and shout it from the rooftops, right? It's share what I know. It's talk way too much about myself. It's tell people stories about things I know. It's teach people things. It's write. It's all of those things. And my website says something creative is coming into focus. And now that I look back at this 4 months later and I look at that and I'm like, that is just some wild, wild assumption that that was where I was going to land. That I didn't know what it was. I knew there was going to be a platform. I knew I wanted to create a blog. I think maybe eventually the blog is going to be the business focus. I mean, it's certainly the thing I enjoy doing the most, but I don't know yet. And so when I look at this, the tagline is life is a portfolio, not a pitch deck. And that just digs into my heart so much right now because there is nothing truer for me right now. I don't want to take a meeting. I don't want to have to get you to buy anything from me. I don't want to have to sell you on something. I want you to be here for the same reason I'm here, which is that you want to be, because I want to be. And when I think about purpose and I think about how you get from where you are to where you want to be, I think you nailing down that definition of purpose and understanding that it is a choice. It's not something coming at you from the universe. And so I probably until this week, again, as a 43-year-old woman, just kind of thought I would find my purpose. And it honestly never occurred to me that I was already living it, that I was already being so inherently honest with myself about who I am and what I want, that I was already doing those things because I was looking at it through the lens of my job, not how I was living my life. And so when I removed the external factor of how I make money, which is important, I'm not saying it's not important, but when I remove that external factor and I look at how I show up to things, it becomes very obvious where there is alignment and where there is misalignment. So when you think about your purpose, people talk in these terms of alignment and misalignment. And I want to give you an example of what this feels like, because again, I'm paying just ridiculous attention to how I feel and how something feels in my body right now. So for me, alignment is I feel interested in something. Let's call it a blog topic. I feel interested in writing about this topic. So I sit down and I write about this topic. And my goal is not necessarily to educate or inspire or create action, but to just simply be introspective about the idea. So if you go to my blog, heatherdeveaux.com, and you start reading some of the things I've written, you'll see that they're all very internalized and yet projected externally for examples and for ideas and for applications, because I'm an education expert. I can't not do it. I can't not take what I know and throw it out into the world in a way that other people can understand it. But this has been a project for me that I have just been documenting out loud. And now that I'm to a point where I'm starting to share more externally, like through this podcast, for example, it is becoming clearer and clearer to me that, oh yeah, no, there's obviously purposeful action here, because even as I talk, I'm getting to new and interesting perspectives and ideas of things I've already thought and things I've already believed. And so there's tons of active reflection happening even as I record this podcast. So your purpose then, when you think about this, you think about when you sit down to do something, it feels aligned. You feel like, I want to do this. You feel like this feels good to me. And you feel like, I can't wait till this is done. So it's a thing in the world. When something is misaligned, I'll use my consulting business as the example, you don't want to take the meeting. You are glad when the client cancels. You start to lose interest in the project because it's dragging on, and you're doing everything you can, but the powers that be are not doing everything they can. And so there's a misalignment in what the purpose is and what the motivation is. And I have gotten really clear as of late about those alignments and the misalignments and the purpose and the motivation, and have been just really kind of shaking the tree to see what falls out in terms of, do I like this? Yes or no? Do I want to do this? Yes or no? Does this feel good? Yes or no? And very simple, not earth-shattering questions, but simple. I think we're always on the lookout for, if you're at all into self-improvement, self-help, and you're here, so you probably are. But if you're at all into those things, you're probably also constantly looking for the system, the framework, the solution, the process. And I have found that it is often the most simplest questions that stop somebody in their tracks. Like, what do you want? I have yet to meet someone who can tell me exactly what they want. And it's those simple, very simple questions that are the hardest to answer, because we tend to try to layer these lenses over it. Like, well, in my family this, and in my work this, and like, no, but like, what do you want at the heart of everything? What do you want? And for me, it's, I just want to feel good. And I know I can't feel good all the time. I know that. I don't feel good all the time. I got some really bad news this week, and I did not feel good about it. But for me, if I'm going to show up and do work, yeah, there's going to be shitty parts of it. Sure. I don't love editing podcasts, but I love putting them out in the world. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to work through the little shitty parts of it to get the really great, fun result that I am looking for, which is, I want to record a podcast, and that means I'm going to have to edit it. Yes, I know I can have other people do it. You'll find out if we've just met. That's just not even my jam. Not even a little bit. I do it all myself. But when you think about purpose, think about the role that purpose plays in your life right now, and how clear are you on that purpose? You don't have to be able to answer that question. I'm 43. I just figured it out. I want you to just start thinking about it. And here's something that can help. Do you believe that purpose is a choice? Because like I didn't. I do now. It just took a new piece of information for me to change my mind. So maybe this is the new piece of information that is going to change your mind about this. Do you believe that it is a choice? Yes or no? And is the thing that you're currently questioning, just fill in the blank. I don't know what you're questioning. Fill in the blank. Is the thing you're currently questioning in relation to your purpose a choice? Do you have to do it? The answer is no, always. Just to be clear, you don't have to do anything. Do you have to do it? Like, well, I got to pay our power bills, sure. Or do you want to do it? And I recognize that it might not be realistic or possible right now for you to change that. I'm not saying you have to change it. I'm saying you have to just question it. I'm saying just try questioning it. Maybe you've never even asked yourself that question because you're afraid of the answer. And you don't want to know what's going to come up for you when you decide, I wanted this yesterday, but I don't think I want this today. I could teach a master class on that. For today, I just want you to think about that shift I talked about from purpose is a choice. It's not preordained. It's not predetermined. It's not going to find you. You're not going to fall into it. You're not going to discover it. You get to choose it, and that is so fucking liberating. I can't even tell you. Like, I just feel like I'm going to be talking about this for a really long time now because I want to tap people on the shoulder and be like, did you know you get to choose? This is like the greatest form of free will I have ever heard of. You just get to choose what your purpose is in life. And I think when we look to others to tell us, and I'm certainly guilty of this. I said this to my boyfriend this week. Just if someone would tell me what to do with my life, I'd probably do it. Because I would get very excited that they thought I could do that thing, and then my ADHD would take over. But do you want to be doing these things? And can you handle the responsibility of having the choice? And that was what really blew my mind. When I asked myself that question, not just, do I think this is a choice? The answer was resoundingly yes, I realized. Do I want the responsibility of having to choose? Like, fuck no. Don't make me make any more decisions for the love of God. But also, like, yeah, because what that meant to me was, if it's a choice, if how I show up every day and what my purpose is in life is a choice, it gets to change. I don't have to be married to it. I don't have to make my entire life about it. I can just make this week about that thing. And the irony, of course, is that I have lived a full life with one purpose. And that one purpose has been to learn as much as I can about myself, to reflect at length about who I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what I get out of it and what do I want to change. The idea that who I am today and who I am tomorrow can be two completely different people because I choose that for myself has been such an amazing awakening, but it's also been a massive responsibility because I no longer get to walk through life being like, well, that's life. No, it isn't. No, those are my goddamn choices, either coming back to bite me in the ass or sending me off into the sunset with a smile on my face. And I'll go back to what I opened this podcast with, which was that I am no longer resourceful, I am resourced. And I don't have to keep looking for the answers because I actually have them inside me. And boy, is that a lot to handle, and boy, is that a lot to manage. And it just got me thinking out loud. And I can't not talk about it. So I feel compelled to show up here, and I feel compelled to write about it, and I feel compelled to share it on LinkedIn, and I feel compelled to explore it. And I think that it is a kind of truth that when you hear it, you sit up a little straighter and you go, do I think that? And you don't have to. It's not a universal truth. It is my truth, and I'm sharing it because maybe it will turn out to also be true for you. Are you resourceful or are you resourced? Are you looking or have you decided? And do you do things because you have to or because you want to? And how do each of those categories feel? How does it feel to be resourceful and scrappy versus resourced and ready? You've got everything you need. How does it feel to have a purpose and to know you can change that purpose on a dime if you want to, but that there is something inside you that compels you to do the things you do, yet you are looking outside of yourself for those answers? How do those two things feel? There is a conflict, right? It creates a conflict, and it's a lot of information to hold at one time. And I think when we are living into our purpose, as so many people say, and like, I gotta tell you, I like this kind of stuff, just, I roll my eyes at it all the time until I'm doing it, because I'm like, oh, it's when I'm doing it that I'm actually my most happy and I'm living my best life and I'm successful and I'm feeling like I'm motivated. It's when I'm feeling like I'm looking for things outside myself that I start to question the work, and I question the validity of it, and I question, does it really matter? And it does matter. And it matters a lot to me. And that's why I'm showing up here. So when you leave here today and you think about your purpose, I want you to try thinking about your purpose as something you create and define and believe just because you can. And that means that if you have previously defined your purpose as what you do for a living or who you think you are, you can peel those layers back and you can define it with one lens, which is the through line of why you do what you do, how you do it, what it feels like to do it. And so for me, when I think about my purpose, I did define it as how I made money in the world, how I contributed to the world, how I showed up to earn an income or create a business or develop a program for a client or whatever that was. That's my purpose. But no, those were just things I was doing. Like my mind is blown, and I gotta tell you, I've been doing self-help and self-improvement and self-reflection for a long time. And this revelation has come from the space I have created for myself in this creative sabbatical to just think and be quiet and listen. And when I listened to that thought, it really shifted a lot of things for me that I think are going to create a fire that has always been inside of me that I've been holding back because it felt like, well, that's not the thing I'm doing. When in reality, it was part of what I was doing. It just wasn't the part that felt like the most me. And we don't have to get to the bottom of this today, but I do want to leave you with this thought that choosing a purpose creates a level of responsibility for yourself. That means you are in the driver's seat, that you're not at the whim or the default of your life, that you don't have to keep doing the things you've been doing, that you get to shift, you get to burn it all down and build it up again if you want. You get to just remove a piece of it. Or you don't have to do anything at all. You can just let it be a thought. And that is a great place to start. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon.